When God sends you into darkness, it's because you carry light. There are moments in life when everything we once understood begins to unravel. The road we were walking on disappears beneath our feet. The voices that once cheered us on fall silent. The light we followed seems to dim, until all around us is shadow. In those moments, we often ask, why me? We plead, God, where are you? And in the stillness of that silence, we assume the worst, that we've been forgotten, abandoned, cast aside. But what if I told you something different? What if I told you that the darkness you find yourself in is not a punishment, it is a placement? What if your wilderness, your confusion, your isolation are all part of a divine assignment? What if the reason God allowed the darkness is because you carry something powerful enough to light it? You see, God does not send light into more light. He sends it into the absence of it. Fire is never needed in the noonday sun. It is needed in the dead of night. A lamp is not placed beneath the sun. It is placed in rooms where no other light exists. When you are surrounded by hardship, heartbreak, or hopelessness, you might be exactly where God intended you to be. Many people misunderstand what it means to be chosen. They assume it means glory, recognition, ease. But being chosen often means being hidden. It means being tested, stretched, and prepared in silence. The ones God sends to bring change are first required to walk through what they will later help others survive. And the reason it feels so heavy is because what you carry is so bright. Throughout history, in scripture and in life, those who carried divine assignments were often led first into isolation. Joseph was thrown into a pit. Moses was driven into the desert. David was chased into caves. Jesus himself walked into the wilderness before stepping into his public mission. Darkness, for them, was not a curse. It was a classroom. It was preparation. It was sacred. And so, if you find yourself today in a season where the path ahead is unclear, where the world seems cold and quiet, where the night feels longer than it should, I invite you to consider this truth. Perhaps you are not lost. Perhaps you have been sent. Perhaps the very reason it feels so dark is because you are the light. This message is for the weary but faithful, for the silent warriors, for those who wonder if they've been forgotten. I'm here to tell you, God knows exactly where you are, and He placed you there not to break you, but to blaze through you. Because when God sends you into darkness, it's not to extinguish your light. It's because you are the light that darkness can't overcome. The divine paradox, why light is sent into. There is a paradox woven into the fabric of the spiritual life, one that defies logic, one that challenges even the strongest of believers. It is this: the brighter your light, the deeper the darkness you will be sent into. This truth is not easy to accept, because most of us have been conditioned to believe that favor should feel good, that being chosen means being celebrated, that walking in purpose should come with ease, with clarity, with comfort. But the reality, as many have quietly discovered, is far more complex and far more divine. When God places His hand upon someone, when He deposits something sacred within their soul, He rarely unveils it under the safety of the sun. Instead, He calls them into the night, into hiddenness, into places where confusion reigns, where support disappears, where the only thing that keeps them moving is the faint whisper of faith. And that's where many people stumble, not because they lack strength, but because they misinterpret the darkness. They assume that God is angry, that He's absent, that they've been left behind. But if they only knew, if they only understood the paradox of divine purpose, they would realize that the darkness is not proof of abandonment. It is evidence of an assignment. Think about it. Light is only necessary where darkness exists. No one needs a candle at noon. No one turns on a lamp in a room already bathed in sunlight. Light is sent to places where it's needed most, to the places where vision has been lost, where direction is unclear, where fear has taken root. So if you have found yourself surrounded by shadows, in a job that drains your soul, in a relationship that tests your endurance, in a life season that feels more like survival than progress, consider that God may have placed you there not as a punishment, but as a torchbearer. Too often, we equate divine favor with visible success. We measure our worth by how smooth the road is, how many doors open, how many people cheer us on. But the truth is, some of God's most powerful movements begin in obscurity. Some of His most chosen vessels are first placed in the wilderness. Before Moses could lead a nation, he had to live in exile. Before David wore a crown, he fled for his life. Before Joseph stepped into authority, he was betrayed, imprisoned, forgotten. And before Jesus healed the masses, he spent 40 days in isolation, being tested in every way. These weren't detours. They were designed. Because darkness doesn't just reveal the strength of your light, it refines it. It teaches you how to burn without applause, how to stand without affirmation, how to stay faithful when no one's watching. It teaches you to lead without a title, to carry hope in hostile places, to speak life even when your own is under pressure. It is in the darkness where true identity is forged. Not when everything is going right, but when nothing is, and you still show up. So many of us ask God for purpose, for calling, for impact. But then we resist the process He uses to shape us for that very purpose. We pray for influence, but shy away from isolation. We ask for strength, but complain when the weight arrives. We long to be vessels of light, but then protest when we're sent into places where that light is actually needed. And yet, if we truly trust the one who sends, then we must also trust where He sends us. There is nothing accidental about your darkness. There is nothing wasted about your season of silence, of uncertainty, of hiddenness. You are not in the wrong place. You are not behind. You are not invisible to heaven. On the contrary, you are being positioned, like a flame being carried into the heart of the storm. The people around you, in your home, in your workplace, in your city, they don't need more noise. They need presence. They need light. And God, in His infinite wisdom, knew exactly where to place you. Maybe you were sent into a family that doesn't understand you. Maybe your workplace is full of chaos, tension, or spiritual dryness. Maybe the city you live in feels cold and heavy. And maybe you've asked God 1,000 times, why am I here? But today I ask you, what if you are the answer? What if your presence is not incidental, but intentional? What if your prayers, your persistence, your peace, are the light that was meant to shift the atmosphere around you? You see, darkness is not always a sign that something's gone wrong. Sometimes, it's the very proof that you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Because those who carry light are not meant to stay in comfort. They are meant to confront what is broken. They are meant to challenge what is hidden. They are meant to carry hope into hopeless places, not for applause, but for purpose. And when the light within you meets the darkness around you, something sacred happens. The atmosphere begins to change. Blind eyes begin to open. Hardened hearts begin to soften. Not because of anything you do loudly, but simply because of who you are quietly. So, the next time you find yourself asking, why am I here? Remember this, God does not make mistakes. He sends light where it's needed most. And if you've been sent into a dark place, it's because He trusted that you could carry the flame. He believed that you had enough within you to not just survive the night, but to bring the dawn. Because when God sends you into darkness, it's not the end. It's the beginning of illumination, recognizing the light within you. One of the greatest tragedies in life is not when people live in darkness. It's when those who carry light don't know they do. They walk through life questioning their worth, shrinking in the face of opposition, apologizing for their presence, because somewhere along the way, they believed a lie. A lie that said they were ordinary. A lie that said their voice doesn't matter. That their story is too broken. That their past disqualifies them. That the world already has enough leaders, enough thinkers, enough light, and that somehow they were not needed. But I am here to tell you something different. I am here to wake up the light inside of you. Because the truth is, you are not here by accident. You are not breathing by coincidence. There is something within you. Call it light, call it purpose, call it fire. That was placed there not by man, but by God. And that light was never meant to be hidden under layers of fear, shame, doubt, or conformity. That light was meant to shine. Now, the enemy of your soul will do everything in his power to make sure you never recognize what you carry. Because if you knew who you truly were, if you knew the weight of your words, the power of your prayers, the strength of your spirit, you would walk differently. You would speak differently. You would show up even when the room tries to shrink you. And so instead, the darkness tries to convince you that you are the problem, that your sensitivity is a flaw, that your compassion is weakness, that your vision is too unrealistic. But what if everything that made you feel different was actually proof that you were set apart? There's a reason you don't fit in everywhere. There's a reason you feel things more deeply than others. There's a reason your spirit gets heavy when others feel nothing at all. It's not because you're broken. It's because you were built for more. You were built to see what others ignore. You were built to carry burdens that others overlook. You were built to respond when others remain silent. That's the nature of light. It doesn't conform to darkness. It disrupts it. And that disruption can be uncomfortable. Many of you listening right now have felt like misfits. You've walked into rooms and felt invisible. You've spoken truth and been mocked. You've carried dreams that no one else could see. And after enough rejection, enough misunderstanding, you started to silence yourself. You started to dim your light. Not because it stopped burning, but because the world kept trying to convince you that it was too much. But hear me, your light is not too much. It's exactly what this world needs. The problem is, we've been taught to associate power with loudness, with status, with charisma. But some of the most powerful lights are quiet, steady, resilient. The mother who prays over her children every night, even when she's exhausted. The young man who chooses honesty in a culture of compromise. The woman who shows up to work with integrity, even when no one's watching. The student who stands up for the bullied. The artist who pours truth into their craft. These are not small acts. These are beams of light in a world starving for authenticity. But you cannot carry light unless you first recognize it. And to recognize it, you must look inward, not outward. The world will not hand you a certificate and say, "You are the one." That's not how God works. He whispers it in the secret places of your heart. He stirs it in your spirit when you're all alone. He confirms it through trials that should have broken you, but didn't. And slowly, as you walk through the fire, through the rejection, through the silence, you begin to realize, I'm still here. I'm still burning. I'm still carrying something this world didn't give me and can't take away. You may not feel powerful right now. You may not feel qualified. You may still be wondering if you're the right person for the job, for the calling, for the message. But let me assure you, light doesn't need to be loud to be effective. It just needs to be present. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just need to show up. In faith, in truth, in obedience. And when you do, the light within you will begin to make a way. Because when you recognize the light within you, you no longer wait for permission. You no longer fear rejection. You no longer dim yourself to fit into places that were never meant to contain you. You begin to walk in alignment with the God who placed that light inside of you. And that is when everything changes. That is when fear begins to lose its grip. That is when your atmosphere begins to shift. Not because the darkness left, but because you finally let your light rise. So today, I challenge you, not to become something new, but to remember what you already are. To reclaim the fire you've buried under disappointment. To own the truth you've watered down to please others. To awaken the dreams you've shelved because they seemed too big. You don't have to wait for the world to see your light. You just have to recognize it and let it shine. Because when God sends you into darkness, He's not waiting for you to find the light. He's trusting that you are the light. And the moment you recognize it, the darkness begins to lose. Walking through darkness without losing the mission. There comes a point in every journey of purpose where knowledge alone is not enough. You've heard the calling. You've recognized the light within you. But now comes the hardest part, the walking. The actual day-by-day movement through the very darkness you were sent to illuminate. This is not poetic. This is real. This is where faith is tested, not in theory, but in the thick of life's most brutal moments. And it is here, right here, that many give up. Not because they were weak, but because they weren't prepared for how long, how lonely, and how heavy the mission would feel. You see, recognizing your light is one thing. But walking with it, through betrayal, disappointment, confusion, and delay, is another. It's one thing to feel inspired on a mountaintop. It's another to stay faithful when the valley stretches on longer than you expected. And yet, this is where your light proves its power. Not in the moments you feel seen, but in the moments you feel buried. Not when the room applauds, but when the silence is so loud you wonder if God is still listening. Some of you are in that place right now. You're still showing up, still doing the work, still carrying the vision, but inside, you're tired. You question if you heard God right. You wonder if you missed something. Because how could the mission feel this hard if it was truly from God? But let me tell you something the enemy doesn't want you to know. Hardship does not mean you're off course. In fact, it's often confirmation that you're right where you need to be. If you look at anyone who has ever made a divine impact in this world, in scripture or in history, they all had to walk through their own darkness. And not just once, again and again. Noah built an ark while being mocked for years. Abraham waited decades for a promise to be fulfilled. Esther risked her life for her people. Paul preached through persecution, shipwrecks, and prison cells. Even Jesus, the purest light this world has ever known, wept in a garden, asking if there might be another way. So what does that mean for you? It means the darkness doesn't disqualify your light. It reveals its endurance. It means that the difficulty you're facing is not evidence that God has abandoned you. It's evidence that your light is strong enough to stand the test. God doesn't place weak fires in the middle of storms. He places those who've been refined, those who've been through the crushing, the pressing, the silence, and came out still burning. But how do you keep going when everything inside of you wants to quit? How do you carry the mission when the path keeps shifting? You don't do it with your own strength. You do it with surrender. You get honest with God. You cry if you need to cry. You rest when you need to rest. You stop pretending to be invincible. And instead, you lean on the one who sent you. Because he doesn't just give you the mission, he walks with you through it. He never called you to carry the fire alone. Sometimes, walking through darkness means letting go of timelines. It means trusting that even when the breakthrough takes longer than expected, the light within you is still doing its work. There are seeds planted in silence that bloom in seasons you can't predict. Your prayers, your perseverance, your integrity, they are not wasted. Even if you don't see the result yet, even if no one claps, even if no one says thank you, heaven is watching. And heaven is building something in you that applause can't give. It also means learning how to live without external validation. When God sends you on a mission, he may also strip away everything that once made you feel secure. Relationships shift, platforms shrink, familiar places grow cold, and all you're left with is his word, the one he whispered to your heart long before the world gave you permission to believe it. That word must become your anchor, not what others say, not what your emotions scream, but what God said when he called you into the dark. There will be days when you want to go back, days when you miss the comfort of fitting in, of not being different, of not having to carry so much. And in those moments, I want you to remember this. You were not called to blend in. You were called to break through. You were not made to coast. You were made to carry light into places most people avoid. That's not a burden. That's a sacred honor. So keep walking, even if it's slow, even if it's quiet, even if you have to walk alone for a while. Your consistency is louder than any darkness. Your faithfulness is speaking even when you say nothing. The way you show up again and again, with humility, with grace, with fire, is how the mission moves forward. You may not feel it now, but people are watching you. Not the version of you that shines under the spotlight, but the version that keeps showing up when no one sees. That version, the one that walks through the night and still doesn't quit, is the proof of light. And let me say this too, you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to fix every broken thing. You just have to be faithful. You just have to hold the flame. Because in due time, God will do what only he can do. He will open the right doors. He will send the right people. He will shine through you in ways you never imagined. But until then, walk, trust, stay lit. Because when God sends you into darkness, he already knows how the story ends. He already sees the victory. Your job is not to control the outcome. Your job is to keep carrying the light. Becoming a beacon, shining where others have fallen. At some point in your journey, something begins to shift. The questions don't always disappear, and the darkness doesn't suddenly vanish, but something changes inside you. You stop walking like a survivor and start standing like a light bearer. You stop asking, why me, and start declaring, use me. You begin to understand that this mission was never just about you. It was about every soul connected to you, every life your light was meant to reach. This is the moment when you stop simply carrying light and you become a beacon. A beacon is not just a light. It is a signal, a guide, a force that cuts through fog, through fear, through failure, and lets others know you are not alone. There is a way forward. There is still hope. There is still fire. And when you become a beacon, your very presence becomes an answer to someone else's silent prayer. But becoming a beacon requires more than simply surviving your own storms. It means using everything you've endured, the wounds, the silence, the rejections, the delays, as fuel for compassion, for wisdom, for courage. It means standing not just for yourself, but for those who no longer have the strength to stand. And it means being willing to stay in places others abandoned, not because it's easy, but because you know that light doesn't retreat when things get dark, it shows up. Many people fall in the darkness. They lose their identity. They let the bitterness in. They surrender to the silence. But the ones who carry the light, the ones God sends, are the ones who shine precisely where others collapsed. They become living proof that the darkness does not have the final word. You become that proof. You become the reminder that broken does not mean useless, that isolated does not mean forgotten, that tested does not mean defeated. You become a walking testimony that God still sends people, still raises warriors, still releases light into the hardest places. But let's be honest, being a beacon comes with a cost. You will be misunderstood. You will be stretched beyond your comfort. You will have days where the very people you were sent to help try to break you. You will pour into others who may never pour back into you. You will light the way for some who don't even realize they're being guided. And yet, you'll keep shining, not because of the applause, but because you've been transformed. Because you know what it's like to walk through fire and come out lit, not consumed. Because your identity is no longer tied to outcomes, it's tied to obedience. And obedience is powerful. It's what keeps you grounded when the wind picks up. It's what reminds you that even when nothing seems to change, you are changing. You are deepening. You are growing. You are shining in ways you never imagined. And as you shine, others begin to awaken. They begin to hope again, to rise again, to believe again. Not because you preached a sermon, but because you lived one. You never know who is watching you in silence. You never know whose faith is hanging by a thread, and your consistency becomes the hand that holds it. You never know whose darkness is one breath away from consuming them, until your light offers a way out. You never know when your story, the one you thought was too messy, too delayed, too painful, becomes the very roadmap for someone else's redemption. This is what it means to become a beacon. You are no longer waiting to be rescued. You are stepping into your role as a rescuer. Not with pride, but with humility. Not because you think you're better, but because you know how far you've come. Because you remember what it felt like to be lost. And now, you refuse to let others wander without light. God didn't send you into the darkness to leave you there. He sent you because He trusted you to carry something the world desperately needed. He knew that even when others gave up, you would keep walking. Even when others gave in, you would keep burning. And now, as you stand in this place, after all the confusion, the battles, the quiet tears, you realize something profound. This darkness didn't destroy you. It revealed you. You didn't just make it through the fire. You became the flame. And now, you light the way for others. You speak life into dry places. You bring peace into chaos. You carry presence into pain. And not because you have all the answers, but because you've learned how to shine even when there were none. You've learned that God doesn't use perfect people. He uses prepared ones. And your preparation came through fire. So let this be your reminder. You are not just a survivor of the dark. You are a beacon within it. And every room you walk into, every heart you touch, every space you occupy, you bring light. Not borrowed light, not temporary light, but divine light. Light that no man can give and no darkness can extinguish. And if the world ever tries to convince you otherwise, if your path ever grows heavy again, if the silence returns and the road becomes unclear, remember what brought you here. Not popularity, not comfort, not ease, but calling, but fire, but God. Because when God sends you into darkness, it is never random. It is strategic. It is sacred. And it is because you carry something powerful enough to pierce what others avoid. You don't just reflect light. You are the light. And the darkness has never and will never overcome it.